Okay, we are going live. This is a presentation based on what we're going to be teaching at the PETS curriculum. This specific PETS curriculum is building your team for success. I'm using one of the 5 modules. This one specifically I thought was going to be a good example. So the example of this one is going to be set up to instruct you and show you exactly how the presentation is going to work, how the notes work, and how the slideshow is put together with the notes, so you then are able to do the reference part from notes to the slideshow itself. Boris, could you move that out of the way? The first part we're going to talk about is actually a slideshow, and I know I disappeared, but I want you to take a look at the slide itself and the screen. The first part of it gives you the session. Session 1, first session is going to be 55 minutes. It's going to be district breakout rooms. So in other words, these are going to be taught in one of the breakout rooms that you as a facilitator will have set up. The slide here, or the time it shows, 5 minutes. 5 minutes means that you have 5 minutes for this specific slide. 10 minutes is the one I put in here. This is actually the time flexibility. In other words, you have 10 minutes in here built into the time module, so you have that flexibility of 10 minutes in case you go over at one point or another. Now each of these slides are timed pretty tight. In other words, I have timing sequences from 1 to 5 to 15 minutes. Also, each of the curriculums have in it an instructional part where you're going to be doing a lot of the speaking in the first part of it. For example, you will have this as notes on the bottom along with some questions that you could ask people in there. Now, you're not going to be able to have time to ask all the questions, but you have 1 to 3 different questions that you could select from if a point isn't connected. So, Boris, let's go ahead and shut that one down. What I'm going to do now is we're going to switch this into slideshow mode. Okay, yeah, you can go ahead and pull that away. I can now control this one. So what they're going to see is they're actually going to be seeing the slide itself. Each of these slides, for example, this one that we're looking at, if you look at the notes, and if you're following along with me, my suggestion is to print the notes out along with the slides. You have slide and notes on the bottom. This one says that it's a 2-minute one. Your run time is 7 minutes. Run time is the actual time that you're using for the clock, for the class itself. On this one specific, it talks about different points: identifying your club's organizational structure, establishing goals, and the questions go down along with a secondary question. For example, do you have goals for your year? If you look at that one, then establishing goals. Question, then follow-up questions: do you have goals for your year that you've already planned out? So you have backup questions to each and every one of these. Note that it says session objectives. On a session objectives portion, this slide itself, you're just going to go over what's going to be covered in that curriculum, in that class. And the reason I set it up that way is because if we didn't have it set up this way, people were wondering what we were actually going to cover. So this is going to be the points that we will be covering in this specific module. Each of the modules are going to have a similar page. Organizational structure. As we get into this now, they're going to be talking about the actual curriculum itself. On this one, and if you're following with your notes, you're going to have 2-minute run time. 2 minutes. Your actual run time now to complete this is going to be 9 minutes. With this, you're going to have questions included in this. What kind of team will you need to achieve those goals and objectives that we just talked about? What slots do you think you can fill based on membership, foundation, public image, etc. So you have on this one actually 5 specific questions that you could talk about in the 2-minute time you have. You can ask somebody, or you can go ahead and cover it yourself and just make the question and then answer it as you go along. Some of the slides and the slide specific will say click. What I did actually from the Far West PETS module, I swapped out where we have no hidden videos in anything, so nothing's encrypted. I did this for simplicity. We are actually just going to be going through the specific slideshow itself. So once you cover that and you got your time covered, you're going to go to the next slide. The next slide we're going to be talking about is resources for your team: human, financial, assistant governors, district, and time factors. On these, you have one specific, well, actually, you have a list of specific points that you want to bring up. For example, human. You have human resources. it has questions in there. How do you assess human resources in your club? Another one would be what are some of the traits that you might look at or look for in candidates specifically, traits, things like that, and what would you look for success. The next one, financial. Same thing, dues collecting, fundraising, happy dollars, all of the above. These are other points that you would want to bring out and ask your group on specifically what they think or what they want to do and accomplish. District resources, we'll talk about those. You have questions specific on what those would be, and also some questions. For example, district assembly. How many of you are doing district training assemblies and planning on having your team there? Those are some of the questions that you could ask and load the front end of it. And time commitment. What is it that you want to do, and how far ahead do you want to actually plan to accomplish those goals? Areas to upgrade. This is a think one here. Specifically, again, 2 minutes. Your total run time will be at 15 minutes. So when you complete this one, you should be 15 minutes into your session. So you're going to have things like how many of you use technology? How many of you, for example, do club events? Things like that. So you're going to have questions that you can ask now into the audience. I've got Boris here, for example. We're looking at education training. Boris, what would be a good example of education training that you think was valuable when you were preparing your team, your members, and your staff?
It was to involve the interact in our district, in our club, and in our zone, in our area, and to ask what resources we're using today in order to reach the young Rotarians. And yeah, that's what we asked.
Thank you. Thank you. So this is an example of how you're going to go through the group. Each of the groups, you're going to try and catch everybody, so at least at one point in time, somebody will be able to answer a question. I may jump to somebody else and go, Rotary brand experience. How many of you have updated your brand to actually show your club? As they raise your hand, you go, well, how'd you do it, and how successful was it? These are questions that are loaded, they're fast, easy to answer. Having a plan, we have the next slide here. This is 3 minutes. Total run time now is at 18 minutes. So when you complete this, you should be at the 18-minute mark. Have a plan. That would be one of the things you have in here. Relevant current information. That's also part of the background for these things. And it'll have questions on the cheat sheet, your notes, that you would be able to then take a look at and probe in a little bit farther. Calendar, what's the calendar? What would you put on that calendar? What are the important points of that calendar? And the bottom one then is being positive. You know, what's important about this? And I would make a note if I was an instructor. The fun part, I would make that and bring that one out, because in my opinion, and it's easy to see, if you have a club that's having fun, you have a club now that's being very productive. So you want to bring that out and put that as part of your lesson plan. Next one, what does it take to build an effective team? You have this slide up here. 4 minutes is the actual time, so now you realize you can go through and ask multiple questions. Your runtime now is going to be hitting 25 minutes. So one of the points that I put in here is a note. It's highlighted in your notes on the bottom. It says non-authority leader. So that was one point that you want to bring out, one concept. You're going to ask somebody what they think a non-authority leader is, and then as you go around, you will get an idea of what it would take to motivate a group, what it would take to be a leader without barking orders, without being, I would say, too one-dimensional as far as the leadership itself. So you get those ideas out, and this is a concept that you want to try and push in. We also have a number of questions here. What does it take to build an effective team? That's one of the questions. You could ask that one out there. You wear many hats as a club president. Sometimes you're a coach, sometimes you're a trainer, sometimes you're a motivator, all of the above that you see up there. Why would that be? And what are these important traits if you're putting all these together? And where would you fall if you're one of the leaders right now? Are you a coach? Are you a motivator? Are you a mentor? Or are you planning on inspiring? And this is, again, part of the interaction that you're going to have with that group. The next one is club teams. This is 2 minutes. Runtime is 27. So we're going to look at this. Where are the strengths? Where are the weaknesses? As you take a look at the people that you're now recruiting, you want to know where their strengths are, where they could be the asset for you, and where the weaknesses are, where they may be a liability to you, or where you could build up and use that weakness then to build somebody and build somebody with stronger leadership later on as a future trait. Questions here. What are our personal strengths as club leaders and what are our personal weaknesses, again, as club leaders? Again, that was 2 minutes with a 27-minute run time. So now we should be about halfway through or close to it. Team leadership, when to make assignments. These are pretty obvious. And this slide here, the main thing is you just go through and you ask each person there or some of the people there, you know, when would you make an assignment? Boris, when would you make an assignment? Do you think it's important?
I would make an assignment when I think it's important. I would begin with my board, and we could discuss on when to make assignments before we go to the club and ask. And
Okay.
that's
Good.
then you can discuss with the club and see how you can achieve those goals.
Okay, good. Thank you. I would go to somebody else. Boris, you could put a separate hat on. I'm going to change your name now to Morris. How and why do you carry over some members of your team?
How I carry them over, I talk to them, I communicate with them, and I assess what are their abilities with them together, and see what's the best way to make things happen.
Good, good. Now, for the facilitators, if you note, a lot of the questions that come up, these are actually set in place so you can now have the interaction. Make sure you don't ask the same person all of the questions. Take it around the room. It could be a round robin process, or it could actually be you selecting somebody that looks like they're maybe possibly less engaged than somebody else. Choosing and changing your team. How would you do this? Again, this is part of the assignment we're going to be taking a look at. This one here, and let me get caught up. My apologies. Got some of these pieces of my notes sticking together. This is a 1-minute slide. The total runtime now is at 33 minutes. And by the way, this is just an introductory slide. If I don't have a lot of notes on the bottom, it specifically is just that. We are now changing to implementing the actual plan itself. So that's why this one is choosing and changing your team. And again, it's just an introductory slide for the next presentation that we're going to be jumping into. Talking about job descriptions, personal expectations, check. With your other leaders, all of the above, all that you see here. Again, these are actually just questions that you're going to be asking out. And you're going to ask them to actually give you an answer on it. Job descriptions. How many of you have job descriptions? How many presidents actually have these put in place to where they know the people that you put in place actually have the idea of that? Personal expectations, that's yours, or it could be theirs. You would then ask, check with other leaders. How many of you have checked with and taken notes from past leadership on their successes? So this is one of the questions that I would then pose out to the group. Again, a short one. This is 1 minute. It gives you a total time. Your run time now will be at 34 minutes. And now this one is interesting. The next one as we get into. This is what I call more of the interactive. Each of the modules is going to have about 1/3 to half of the session done with more interactive questioning that's going on. For example, this one here, we're going to have about 4 of these on this one. We're going to talk about these people, and you're going to bring this up. As you do this, you have 2 choices, and this is a 2-minute one here. You're going to ask the group, what do you think about Ronald? Is this somebody that you have? Is this something that would work well as a Club Foundation chair based on experience, or do you think he would have a better role someplace else? So you're going to pose this out to the group. You got 2 minutes for this one, so you can go around most of the area, most of the room itself, and get some feedback on what they think and why. The important part is to ask why they think Ronald is qualified or not qualified. Once you get that one, you jump into the next one. And it's the same thing. Now we're talking about Elizabeth here. And it's the same thing. You're going to ask the group what they think about her and if they think she would be a good membership chair. why that would be, or what you would ask if her KPIs, key performance indicators, would say that she was suited for the job. How many members did she bring in? How many members did she chase away? What was the retention factor? These are some of the questions you're going to ask the group. And you're going to ask them again, 2 minutes, you're now at 40-minute runtime, if you would keep her or trade her. And when it says trade, that's put her in a different position. Now, each of these are extremely interactive. You shouldn't be doing any of the answering yourself. Paula, we're going to do the same thing. And we tried to change it up because, as in case in your club, every club is different, every member is different. Everybody's going to have a different idea. They're going to have things that they want to do, a passion, or something that they don't want to do. So here you go. Travels a lot, wants to be an international chair. So looking at the two, if she travels a lot, she wants to be an international chair, how would that work together? But there again, how would that potentially be a detriment? Is she traveling too much? Is she traveling to areas that are more recreational, or something where she actually wants to do an international project? Questions that you are going to pose to the group. On these slides itself, I have not put any notes down with the exception of as you go through the keep or trade part. So it's going to be open discussion. There's no right answer is what I'm saying. Next one we have Jim. We talk about him, some of the traits that he has. Wants to be the chair of your biggest fundraiser. Would he fit? What's his experience? Would being a single parent create an issue? If he's not very well organized, what would you do to compensate for that? And if you think he is a good fit, what would you put for the weaknesses? Because you're measuring now strengths and weaknesses within each of these individual people. Again, this is a little bit shorter. We're now down to 1 minute per slide, 42-minute total run time. Here we go. We're going to do the same thing again with this one. Again, this is 1 minute runtime with a runtime of 43 minutes. Same thing on this one. And if you take note, this is about a 15-minute exercise if you put all the numbers together. Here's Dan. We're going to talk about him. Again, he is a 1 minute slide. Now that we're getting a little bit more dialed and your group has a little bit better understanding of that one, you're going to go through and do exactly the same thing. Where's his strength, where's his weaknesses, and how could you compensate for those? Or the position. So here you go. Now we're talking about a draft, keeping them or trading them. When we say keep or trade, which position would they be best in, and how would you motivate them if, in fact, there was something else that you want them to do that they did not quite fit into? So you're going to ask this. What would you do? And this becomes a collective discussion with the group. This one here is 2 minutes. Your run time now is at 45 minutes, so you're getting close to the end. Developing your members. We talked about the educational component and where your resources are. So we have each of these, and we are going to now ask how many of them or what they see the benefits of each and every one of these are. So for example, if I were leading the class, district assemblies. How many of you do district training assemblies, and how many of you are planning on training your entire team at one of the district assemblies, district training assemblies? So that would be one of the questions I would ask. For example, I pose that to Boris. Do we have a club trainer? Boris, do you have a club trainer?
We don't.
You don't? Do you think it's important?
I think it is.
Okay, Boris says he thinks it is important. Why would that be, Boris?
Because we don't know many of the members that are going to have positions. They don't know exactly what they're going to do, and it's always good to have someone to ask these questions, someone to mentor and to help with positions.
Good, very good. Now we're going to jump to the next one, shadowing. Boris, I'm going to have you pass the mic over to the person standing next to you, who happens to be Morris. Shadowing. As a president, coming in, president-elect now, do you have somebody that you're shadowing, somebody that's your advisor, somebody that's mentoring you through the process, so you don't catch yourself in any shortfalls?
I always try to consult my classmates from all the Rotary clubs around me, and if I have questions, I still ongoing throughout the year. I'm asking questions if there are some, and challenges are coming, and there's someone to help me.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to jump into the next one. Supporting your team. We have thank yous, recognitions, celebrations, and mementos. So how many of you actually do physical card thank yous? Out there, anybody? Okay, we had a few hands up there. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to ask one of those hands that came up what they do for thank yous. Is it a letter? Is it a note? Or is it something different, like an award? Recognitions. We want to talk about recognitions. What have you put in place for recognitions? Is there a list of areas where you're actually going to be recognizing for example, foundation giving, volunteer work at a specific event, something like that, accumulation of volunteer hours, celebrations, anniversaries, things like that, birthdays, any of these things could show up on that. So you're going to ask again what that would be. What celebrations do you actually celebrate or use? And mementos. What are you giving to those people in recognition of what they're getting, whether it be a Paul Harris, whether it be a happy buck, whatever you would do. And you're going to ask them what those actually are. So that's part of this one here, is for them to then share some of that one, some of the information from that one, and kind of create a list of best practices. That was a 2-minute slide there. Our total runtime now is approaching 50 minutes, so we are at 50 minutes once we complete that slide. And by the way, for those of you that don't have a clock or time or not that familiar with keeping time, make sure you have a timekeeper in your room. If you need to bring somebody in from the outside, an assistant governor, somebody else like that, a friend, bring them in and make sure that they hold you on that time, because you'll need to be aware of that. These, by the way, if you get stuck on them, you could be in a lot of trouble. If you go too fast, it's actually better, because you could always go back and then start asking people specific questions that are more important or more relevant to the actual topic itself. The takeaways. This is an important part. It's only 1 minute. Your total runtime now is at 51 minutes. But the takeaways are something that you're going to ask them to take a look at. When I say that, ask them to start listing out some of the important factors and some of the things that they got out of this class, because this is what they're going to be using as they go forward with that. One of the other slides I put in, now that they've created those, is one of these, the think part. Takeaways. We talked about the non-authority leader. You're going to ask again what they think a non-authority leader is. Micromanaging. I put that up there because I don't care how many times you teach this class, you're going to probably have 10% still doing the micromanage part of it. The bottom part is recognize successes and have fun. So we put that out there because these points may have been missed as you went around the room. So make sure you do these things. This becomes their actual takeaway. I put this slide up there specific because this is the lesson plan that I want them to walk away with. Now, aha moments. Every class is going to have this, the aha moments. You're going to ask now the group, what did you get out of the class? What did you learn that you didn't know before? What did you learn that you want to implement in to your year, your season? So that's what the aha moment's for. This one here is only 1 minute. You're now reaching the 52-minute mark. And that is the last slide. So this is completing your evaluation form. Each of these classes will have an evaluation form that we use. The reason that we do these things, we want to modify curriculum based on items or weaknesses that we've identified with this evaluation. I think it's an important part of that one. So that is a walkthrough on this specific class. Each of the classes are now designed pretty much the same way. You will have interaction, specific one-slide question and answer parts of it, and then as you get into it, towards the middle part of the session, you will then have exercises specific to either groups or individuals. This one here was done more as a round robin. I have some that are broken down in groups of 3 to 5, so you will see that in the notes itself. My suggestion to you is to print it out as I have with mine, so that your curriculum actually, let's kill this one here. So your curriculum actually ends up like this. You could put this in a binder, whatever you want to do, but the important part is that you are able then to be able to follow along. I use these a lot, specifically because I use highlighters on questions that I think are important. So I would highlight some of the points that I think are relevant that I want to pass on to the president-elects. This part here is, again, the timing issue. having the time and set in place is crucial. You need to follow along with that one. Also, with the evaluations, we are going to note if in fact you're doing too much lecturing or too much facilitating. Most of the time it's going to be too much lecturing. So as you bring these forward, make sure you, as you do the slides, you ask them to answer the questions. You don't read it for them. Now I'm going to be available for that one. This is going to kind of wrap this one up. I'm going to ask each of you trainers and facilitators to look at your curriculum. Give me a call, give me an email, let me know if you have any questions on those, because some of them are a little bit more complex. When I say that, some of the ideas, some of the thoughts that go into this thing, and some of the flow specifically of each of these classes will be a little bit different to you. Overall, I do want you to put a little bit of input, personal input to that, but the important part is that you follow this curriculum using the time that sequence that we have there, and realize that you want them to do more of the talking than you do. Okay, by the way, my phone number is 805-448-9912, and my email address is wade@wadenomura.com. So go ahead and get those out to me. We are going to ask each of you to take a look at those and report back individually on each of the modules that you'll be teaching, if in fact you understand it or if there's any questions. We have 17 facilitators now. I anticipate we may need as many as 21 trained for this. So there you go. Go have at it and get back to me if you have any questions. Thank you.